into the courtroom under bright white light. Two plastic hearts found love at first sight. One had a bullet hole, the other had a frown. But when the trial paused, oh baby, love went down. It's hot mannequin love in the court of law. No breath, no blood, just a flawless jaw. Struck a pose, then struck a spark. Made of fiberglass, but lit up the dark. Hot mannequin love with the lenses askew. Who knew Exhibit A would look so into you? She leaned just right, he's sweet just so. Like Cupid fired a dart through a Velcro torso. The jury looked confused, the bailiff blushed, the stenographer typed. Objection, they're flushed. Hot mannequin love, no heartbeat, no shame. But they set off fired a dart through a Velcro torso. The jury looked confused, the bailiff blushed, the stenographer typed. Objection, they're flushed. Hot mannequin love, no heartbeat, no shame. But they set off fire alarms just the same. Crime scene dolls, now courtroom flames. In love so real, it should be in chains. Hot mannequin love, not illegal but true. Just don't let the judge catch them kissing in view.
Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome everyone. Welcome Baker Raiders. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you Baker for the redirect. You might be wondering what hot mannequin love has to do with Betty Broderick. Well, that's because they've been the most, I won't say fun thing about this trial, but the state used life-size mannequins with dowel rods through them to show us exactly where Betty placed her rounds in her ex-husband Dan and his new wife Linda. And we are sure that they fell in love while they were standing in the back of the courtroom. They kept moving. I don't know who was moving them, but one day they looked mad at each other, and the others, they looked like they made up. So people kept saying they were in love, so I just made a song. That's all there is to it. I'm good, Flash fan. How are you? And yes, you are snapping your fingers to this because it's snappy. Hey, Gabby. Hey. What's up, Ronnie? Glad to see you. Dare. You like the more mushy mannequins. That's right, Shinny. Because it's snappy. We're going to miss that song when this is over. This is almost over. What's up, old soul? Hello, June. Tink, tink. So for, whoa, moved on me. For those of you that are joining us from Baker's, this trial is from 1991. It is the second trial that Court TV covered. And this is Betty Broderick's retrial. Her first trial ended in a hung jury, not on guilt or innocence, but her level of guilt. So they did not show that one. So we have this one. We are in the part 2 of the state's rebuttal witness, Dr. Park Dietz. Yesterday, he painted a pretty grim picture of Betty with his, he's a forensic psychologist. He painted her as a narcissist. He went through several steps. I think there was 9 of them on why she's a narcissist. We heard some of the things he was putting in those steps out of Betty's own mouth of things that she did. To this day, I don't think that Betty has ever taken responsibility or shown any amount of remorse for unaliving Dan and Linda. She's still in prison. She's been up for parole 3 times, been denied all 3 times, obviously. And I think that if she doesn't get to the point where she can at least admit I should not have done that, or I'm sorry I did that. She's going to stay right where she is. So that's not a spoiler alert. Sorry if you're not familiar with this trial, but she did what they are accusing her of, and she so much as admitted it. So, hey, Annabelle. I saw somebody else, and AT1. Good to see you guys. So, yes, her friends called her puffy and fat, and that was the defense questioning them on how much weight she had gained. So, so yesterday we saw the direct examination of Dr. Dietz by the state. He rested yesterday, which I was shocked that he did not go into what we're going to watch tonight. So tonight it's all defense. And he has a lot of work to do to repair Betty's image. And so far, he's not really done a great job of putting on a defense for Betty at all. He doesn't have a lot to work with, but he hasn't asked good questions. He has not called great witnesses. Most of them have helped the state, in my opinion, and not helped Betty at all. Her friends did not help her whatsoever. And I would say that they weren't her friends very long after that, because Betty is quite spiteful and vengeful, and I would say that they were gone. So he doesn't have one. He doesn't have a defense. Other than Dan and Linda were mean to Betty. That, absolutely. Betty was mean back to Dan and Linda. And that's the simplest terms to put it in. But Betty they were horrible to each other. She was the most horrible. She could have just went on with her life. She was getting $16,000 a month in alimony back in 1989, I think, when that started. She could have just walked away, but she couldn't. So her kids lost Dan, they lost her, and they've had to grow up without either parent. They can at least see their mom if they want to. Hey, lady in gray. Good to see you. Welcome. And yes, Betty stole all the silver spoons, allegedly, when she bumped into the front door of Dan's home. We all know she ran into it and caused a lot of damage, and her children were inside, and she did not know where, and she really didn't seem to care. So I've got it ready to go. Let me know if the sound's okay. Should be. And let's do it.
Matter of the people of the state of California versus Elizabeth Broderick. Court finds all members of the jury panel are present. All counsel are present. Mrs. Broderick is present. Dr. Dietz is back on the witness stand. You may proceed, Mr. Early.
Dr. Dietz, when part of your business is having a company that caters to stars in Hollywood, senators, people like that, is that not correct?
Oh, well, actually, more of the work is toward Fortune 500 companies, but occasionally I do work on behalf of Hollywood celebrities, and not senators, no.
Okay. Well, you also, there's some political figures that you have a company that holds itself out to, is that correct? For consulting?
I've done research on threats to political figures, and I suppose the only political figures that I've done consulting for have been judges. I don't think there are any other kinds of political figures.
Your Honor, excuse me, I think the microphone is turned on.
Oh. Thank you.
Mechanical engineer.
You list in your resume a number of cases that you've been involved in. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a list of some of them.
Yeah, it's the well-known cases that you've been involved in. Is that correct?
Those are the ones that are listed.
And you, in fact, as you do these cases, you sometimes then use them as a form of a basis for you to give lectures and to be invited to places to speak on. Is that correct?
I've probably given half a dozen, maybe as many as 10 talks that involve some notable case or a notable case or another.
Okay. And at times when you take the cases, you know that they will become either parts of books or other writings of yours. Is that not correct?
There are times that I hope to use a case for case history of something I'm writing about, yes.
Okay, and that's before you testify even. Is that correct?
Did I know that?
Yes.
Well, sometimes. I mean, for example, I'm not writing about anything this case is relevant to, but someday I might.
Now, at the time that you do get paid for your work, do you know?
Most of the time,
Okay, and you were paid on this case.
yes.
And were you paid a flat fee, an hourly fee?
An hourly rate.
And what was your hourly rate?
For Dr. Lipian's time, $125 an hour. For my time, $300 an hour.
Now, you've written articles before about psychiatrists and the different motives they have, whether they're retained or appointed, haven't you?
Yes,
And you wrote one in 1986, did you not? About doctors and the various, the way that things may affect how they look at cases based on whether they're retained, appointed, part of the system.
I think it was 1986. I did write about how some of the market forces provide incentives.
And you wrote then that private psychiatrists can charge anywhere from $125 to $200 an hour. Those are the figures you used, is that correct?
I don't recall it, maybe. That sounds what the rates had been at that time.
And so the rate since 1986 now is gone from up to your rate of $300 an hour.
No, it's actually gone up higher than that.
Now, at the time that you were reading a number of passages from Elizabeth Broderick's writings at times as examples of her behavior, is that something that you can almost pick out of anybody? You can take one of their writings and probably pick out an example of what kind of behavior they might have?
You couldn't pick examples of those conditions out of just anybody's writings, but you could, out of anyone's writings, look for examples of personality disorder features and maybe find them.
Now, at the time that you pick out examples, the best way to do that so someone understands what someone's to talk about is sometimes to give context to what we're talking about. Isn't that right? And you try as a professional to give context to why someone might give a certain answer. Isn't that right?
Sometimes it's needed to clarify.
In the marriage encounter, there is various questions that are asked to the people, and then they're required to give answers as part of the marriage encounter. Isn't that correct?
Some of the format was questions and answers, yes.
So, for instance, where you said that Gabe is part of her personality disorder before 1983, and you were talking about people seem to envy us. The question that was asked is, what do I like best about us? Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's what I think I testified to.
She also talked that they have nice kids. Is that correct in that answer?
I don't remember what the other four were, but there were four other things, I think.
They talked about that we're both smart. We both work hard. Those were other things that she said that they liked about us. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Those are all things that you would say are either narcissistic, histrionic, or antisocial, those answers?
No, I thought those answers were true.
Okay. So the fact that you were able to pick out one answer and say that somehow, and you didn't think that it was true that people seem to envy them?
That might be true, but I also think that liking that is one of one's most valued traits. It reflects something unusual. People like having the things that would be envied, but liking being envied is not an ordinary trait.
Did you happen to read the whole marriage encounter?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Now, she talked about her weak points in there, did she not? She gave some indications of what were her weak points. Is that right?
I recall something like that, yes.
Okay. She didn't see herself as perfect.
That's correct.
The I'd like to ask you about this passage, and you tell me what this shows as her being the points that show that she is narcissistic and histrionic as a disorder in 1983. Darling Dan.
Objection, Your Honor, if it was not a passage that was referred to or relied upon in forming the basis of this opinion, that's improper. Just simply read it.
Sustained at this point, show us if relied on that.
Was there parts of the marriage encounter that you just threw out and said, since they don't prove my point, they're irrelevant, or did you look at the whole marriage?
Mr. That's inappropriate.
Okay, I'll ask the question, Your Honor. Did you look at the whole marriage encounter and consider the whole marriage encounter, or did you only pick out parts of it and say, these are the only parts to me that are relevant?
I read the entire thing and I looked to see if there were examples of any of the characteristics of psychopathology.
And did you feel that the whole marriage encounter showed at least what her personality or how she thought about herself? Or are you saying that you were able to pick out just one or two lines in abstract and that the rest didn't tell you anything?
Well, I wasn't asked to address the life and times of Mrs. Broderick, only whether she had mental conditions.
Well,
And so that's what I, of course, looked for. But I did read it all, and I think that it did give a fair accounting of how she wanted to present herself to her husband at that time.
and so by reading the marriage encounter, you would get, at this point in time, you didn't believe that November 5th, 1989 was on her mind, did you? In other words, you didn't think that she was writing this for this trial?
No, I thought she was writing it for Dan and for the sake of their marriage.
Okay. So it would tell you something about reading it, about how she, if I withdraw the question, you indicated that that now if we could look back and we could find some writings of hers, we would then know what she was like as a person. We would have more scrutiny. This was a writing of hers done pre-1983, is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. So in here, by going through the passages, we would have some idea of what she was like as a person when she wouldn't have necessarily the motives she even had in 1985 or 86 when she's looking at a divorce. Would you agree with that?
I think it would give you a very good view of how in 1976, Mrs. Broderick wished to appear to her husband.
Okay. I'm going to read you then this passage. It occurs to me how long it's been since we have written letters, and I like them so much, both to write and receive them. I'm really liking this weekend. We've been so right in the past, recognizing what's wrong with us. We're so smart about that, but it seems we cannot go beyond that, and I hope we will start to now. I love the part about the opposite of love is indifference. We never hated each other, but we have, or at least I feel you have been guilty of the opposite of love, and it really hurts. Do you feel an accurate representation of what she's like? Or is this part of the histrionic or narcissistic personality?
I think that that's a genuine statement, if that's what you're asking, that she finds herself feeling hurt when he seems indifferent to her. Now, what would have to do with her personality makeup would require, on a point like that, knowing whether objectively he was being indifferent. If she perceived it as indifferent, even when what he was doing most people would perceive as warm and sensitive and generous, then that could be reflective of her excessive need for attention, that what for most people would be thought warmth, to her seemed indifferent.
You read his marriage encounter, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't read his at all?
No.
So when you were given these volumes of books and paper, that part never was given to you and you never requested it?
By the time I knew it existed, I already knew that I'd been, that there was a ruling that I already knew what the limits of my testimony were going to be, and that they would not be including.
When did you get involved? When did you get involved in this case?
Many months ago.
Before the trial began?
Oh, yes.
And when did you get this material?
The marriage encounter book?
No, all of these transcripts of the last trial.
The transcripts of the last trial, again, many months ago.
Before the trial began?
Yes, that's right.
And the marriage encounter was mentioned in the last trial, was it not? and actually read to the jury, or the jury read it?
Objection irrelevant. Oh, Rose can answer that, if you remember.
I don't remember, but I knew that there were lots of writings by her and had lots of those. I didn't know of the separate thing called the Marriage Encounter book until quite recently.
Okay, so you didn't read the whole trial transcript. Sometimes your associate did that.
I don't think you read the entire trial transcript either, only the testimony of particular witnesses, the ones that were mentioned before.
Yeah.
And as to which of us read which parts, I'm not sure I could even reconstruct all that.
Did the both of you together read the whole trial transcript, or was just you focused in on particular witnesses?
I know that I read all of the testimony of the mental health professionals, and I know that I read all of the direct and cross-examination of Mrs. Broderick. I think that it was Dr. Lippian who first summarized the testimony of Kim and Lee Broderick.
Did you read any of the other witnesses that were called to trial?
I don't recall reading any of them, no.
Did you recall reading any testimony of friends and acquaintances of Elizabeth Broderick?
No, only the ones that I listed before.
Did and you say that you were told that you didn't read One Marriage Encounter because you didn't think that it was going to come into evidence?
You're
No.
right. That's misleading. He's been limited to what he can express an opinion.
Just go on to another area, Mr. Wright.
The she goes on to say, this is all true. Now, I don't know what else to say except I love you and I hope we can accommodate each other better. One of the big hurdles I'm up against is your refusal of the need to share. I really think all people do, but you're saying that you don't. Now, is her need to, at least her expression of a need to share, is that something that's narcissistic, histrionic?
Not of itself, no.
This has got to be a mutual type of fulfilling each other's needs, but you keep saying you don't have these needs, which I believe. But in a way, I feel sorry for you that you don't open yourself up to some wonderful happiness. I think your self-image is so guarded that you're not living life and enjoying it to the fullest. Is that something that is her narcissism or her histrionics at that time?
Not unless it's misleading.
You read some quotes about her feelings about her being the center of attention. Did you did she talk about things that she needed that were important to her, like listening to people, writing "Don't interrupt at all," "Don't comment," "Don't shift eyes on position," "Don't be assured you know what's coming"? Did she talk about needing to listen to other people's feelings?
I read that, but I couldn't tell from the context whether this was advice given to everyone about how to be a better listener, or whether this was someone's critique of her and she was trying to learn how to develop empathic listening skills that she lacked. I couldn't tell. It looked like an exercise program to me.
When you talked about someone that would need to be the center of attention, she writes, at first it sounds trivial, but when I really think about it, you are the most important person I have in the whole universe, bar absolutely none, and I'll be lost without you. That's the person who feels that that the world revolves around them. That's what she's saying.
She is expressing her dependency and seeking to make it plain to her husband that he's important to her.
She talks in there about feel like I'm living in a very bad Del Mar fog, or that snowstorm we drove through once, like speeding along, not seeing what is ahead, anticipating a terrible thing to happen to us at any second, losing touch with the world, unable to cling to anything secure. I like the sunshine and I long for the clarity and predictability and security in our lives. Now she's talking about their lives together. Is that someone who is only using that relationship as she would in that her borderline personality or in her narcissistic personality?
Someone who is expressing feelings of insecurity and seems to sense that the marriage was in trouble even then.
What's up, Danny? Holy forehead. You didn't see his eyebrows? I swear they've got a string in the center of them. He reminds me of Jack-o'-lantern. That's what I couldn't think of yesterday. What's up, Bri? Thanks for being a member for 13 months. I appreciate it so much. And we will conclude this case a week from Thursday. So next Thursday, as long as nothing happens, which is weird. I don't like to say things because then something happens. Hey, Old Line Red, you're always so torn about this case. Obviously, she should pay the price for unaliving 2 people, but she had to. Dan really contributed to her basically going nuts. He probably did contribute to her doing things, but we have heard her own words of things that she was doing that were so bad and so detrimental, especially to her son. It was so bad. We listened to a 45-minute phone call where he was begging her over and over and over to not say any more bad words because she could not see them if she continued to say bad words, and she couldn't stop. It was sad. He was crying. There was just a lot of bad stuff on every side. I think she would probably be out of prison if she would just accept responsibility for her actions and what she did. And she has not in the 3 times that she's been up for parole so far. Ronnie, I don't know if that's true or not true. I've read some different things, but I can't verify them. So I just haven't said anything about them because I don't know. So the things I've read, it was like there was some things going on before they ever got divorced. But again, I cannot verify if those stories are true stories or just something somebody said. I don't know. And I don't know that they proved that he did that because they had 2 judges on the stand for the defense who had supposedly made comments to Dan and had meetings with Dan in chambers before the hearings. And one, didn't know what they were talking about, and 2, acted absolutely appalled that anybody would even suggest that they would do something like that in the first place. They were like, they knew who Dan was, but that was it. Like, they weren't friends with him outside of the courtroom. So I don't know. All that's very confusing. Her attorneys, one attorney came in, he wasn't getting paid. Now, then you could say Dan was responsible for paying them. It's like, I don't know. And we will not get Dan and Linda's side. So it makes it even all that much more confusing because who knows? Hello, Christine. Hope you're doing well tonight and staying cool. Yes, Dan divorced her. And not unalived her. Well, she is puffy and fat. According to her friends, she gained an enormous, as one friend said, amount of weight. It's like, oh my gosh. This judge is getting ready to get into the decanter on his bench up there. Carmen, it's Texas, man. I can't tell you. Every time you come up with another weird story, we making it so I can't ever move there.
Now, you indicated that she was somebody who was, who would want to be in command, and problems with that. Is that something that you would see with somebody who's narcissistic, wanting to be in control?
I don't understand the question.
Well, is part of narcissism wanting to be in control?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Is there anything that you saw about her that she needed to be in control of things?
I think there's some indication of that. Yes.
Okay. Now, needing to have some control over your life, that's not necessarily bad, is it?
No.
Okay. And in a marriage, when somebody is making decisions on what furniture they buy, what they're going to spend money on in the house, does that show a disorder because the other spouse would like to be involved in that?
No.
You read one line out of the cases out of the marriage encounter in regards to her using people. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Now, that was actually a whole thing that she wrote, a whole letter, and that was just one line in the middle. Isn't that correct?
I think it was more than one line. You're talking about the oodles of men?
Yeah.
Is,
Yes.
but it was just one part of a larger piece.
Okay. And what she wrote is, I feel concerned that you are falling prey to such trivial strokes, as you call them, from people who mean nothing to you. You react to the smallest thing. When people that mean everything to you try to give you strokes, you slough them off and don't react. I too fall for the trivial ones, and they are really fun to get, but I also know from experience, which I think you lack, that you are unique in the world. We used to marvel that we thought the same thought at the same second. I've been attracted to and gotten to know what seems to be oodles of men of all types, sizes, and backgrounds. In most cases, after 5 minutes, I have no use for these people. In some cases, it takes quite a while before I write them off as no use to me. But the first moment I saw you, I liked you, spoke to you, it stayed, wrote to you, it grew, dated you, got only better and better. No one else I've ever met before or since was as right as you. I really value that and recognize that you cannot be easily or at all replaced. Trivial strokes are fun, but I can't do without the real ones. You seem to think they're interchangeable. Thought. Writing and receiving love letters was a tremendously important factor in the development of our love. I think we both enjoyed it. I know I did, and I look very much forward to resuming the practice. Now, when people date, often they meet a number of people, and after a while, they find out that they're either shallow or they don't like them or there's nothing there, and they move on. Is that correct?
Sure.
And you feel that what she's doing is saying here that she just rejects, just uses people and casts them away, rather than, you don't think this letter says that when I found something that was important to me, I formed a strong bond. You don't feel it says that. This letter represents to you her feelings that she rejects, just uses people and throws them away.
Well, I think primarily that letter shows her to be a normal person, as she is most of the time in most ways. There isn't that much wrong with her. On the other hand, even in the midst of this predominantly normal letter written to her husband, she makes what I would regard as an error in her intention to communicate how special he is and how perfect and unique their marriage is, when she conveys to him the fact that he's only one of oodles of men she's been attracted to, most of whom she's discarded as of no use. Because the inference that might be drawn from that is that she concluded he was of use to her.
So that's what you think. That's how you read that letter. That really what it is a slap in his face and telling him that.
No, I think it's meant to be an endearing, enchanting, you're my most special person letter. She happens to reveal herself a little more than might have been effective there.
The you talked about some of her needs in those personality as use of people. In other words, she would do things that are only good for her. That's how she perceives the world, is as if it's good for her, then that's how she does that.
Those aren't the only things she would do, but often her priorities reflected putting her needs, and in fact, the needs reflecting these traits I've talked about, ahead of other priorities. But that isn't all there was to her. Most of the time she was behaving normally.
Well, she talked about needing a vacation in her marriage encounter, did she not?
Yes.
Where she says, I've been pestering for a long time and I need a vacation. Then what she says is, what I meant was, I need to get you away from TV and work in Barlotta and booze to get you back to me. This has sort of fulfilled that, but I still need to have a family time. It could happen in our home if we could just turn off everything else and just being a lovely family for 2 days or a week or 2 weeks without any worldly obligations or duties for any of us. It would be so relaxing and worthwhile, and we all need it. Maybe something you can relate to better is we need a sofa. Nothing else for our house. Everything else, and there's lots we want. We need a sofa so you and I can be physically close in the evenings and share the day's events and feelings so that we can go to bed in love. Not what we have now. By the time we go to bed, I'm full of resentment for the lack of closeness and communication during the evening. How can we make love to that? Now, when you're talking about her look for ideal love, is that what you were talking about?
Well, you didn't read it accurately. The end of that quotation is, how can I make love to that?
Okay.
That, for the most part, is a statement of how of very good ideas for the marriage. Those are fine things that would help many marriages. But what she ends with is a dehumanizing statement about Dan. She goes too far. It sounds sweet and sensitive and very nice up to that point.
So you would read into that when she talks about how they can improve their marriage, you read into that that's the sign of her disorders.
No, I think mostly it's normal and a good idea. I think a lot of marriages could profit from that kind of vacation and from planning the furniture so that if they're going to watch TV, they sit together. Those are good ideas. It's smart. And I didn't rely on that as evidence of pathology. However, when you look at the last sentence, it is a little troublesome that even as she tries to convey such very nice and sensitive and caring ideas, in comes the hostility of how can I make love to that?
And the purpose of going to the marriage encounter was to make the marriage better, is that correct? Okay, this witness says no way of knowing that.
Sustained.
You have no, did you read Elizabeth Broderick's testimony about why they went to the marriage encounter?
Yes.
Now, when somebody is narcissistic and histrionic, you would expect that from your diagnosis of the things that you would see, you might see self-importance. Is that correct? If someone who is narcissistic, there's a lot of, one of the things you say is that there's self-importance.
people who are narcissistic often feel self-important. That's
They're concerned, for instance, about how people are going to perceive them when they're dead and gone, how people are going to look at them, how other people perceive them. In other words, what face they're putting on and how people are going to look at them.
yes, that's right.
People who are narcissistic are concerned with worldly goods a lot of times. Isn't that correct? They want to have wealth.
In 1991 in America, that's a very common way it's displayed, yes.
Okay. Well, if someone is narcissistic when they're younger, it might have to do with wealth. Only wanting a sofa is not wanting lots of material wealth, is it?
Wanting a sofa? No.
Now, you mentioned something about a threatening letter from Elizabeth Broderick and what she read into that letter. Remember that?
Yes.
That testimony? Obviously, what people read into things in relationships, a lot of times depend on what the relationship there is, what they have between them. Isn't that correct? Am I making sense to you at all?
Sometimes.
Okay. It's probably my narcissistic tendency.
I'm not making any
that are not making any sense. But that, in other words, some people have the experience that you can go see your mother for Thanksgiving and all she has to do is say 2 words and you can come off the chair because you know the whole history behind those 2 words. And everyone else looks at you and says, what a nut. He screamed and yelled at his mother and she only said 2 words, or she only said, aren't you going to eat the potatoes? Now, sometimes when you're judging how people react to things, you're judging the history. You have to know some history behind them. Is that correct?
That can be true.
Okay. So when somebody looks at somebody who might be in a relationship where the person can say things very nicely, if it's a domineering, controlling relationship, they might respond knowing some history of what that person really feels like. I mean, what's important to them, what's not. Would you agree with that? That might bring out. Someone might read something that to you might be innocuous, to them might have lots of meanings because of the way the person's dealt with them in the past.
Yes.
Okay. So for instance, did you see photo number 69, which is Dan Broderick's house?
I'm not sure. May I see it? Yes, I've seen this.
Okay. And you don't know, did you know whether the one thing that Elizabeth wanted out of the marriage encounter, whether that was something that Dan ended up with, the couch? Objection as to what Dan ended up with.
We'll answer that.
Do you know whether that's something that ended up happening? If you do or you don't, I don't know.
I'm not sure what you're asking, but I don't know if one of those couches is the one that came from the encounter request.
Did you read the diary entries that talked about where Betty wrote in her diaries about Dan demanding lists and Dan wanting things and her saying, I keep giving him the list and he keeps writing me these letters asking where they are. He won't talk to me.
Excuse me, I would ask her to explain to confront the doctor with certain diary pages. You get the diary pages shown to the doctor.
If this cross-examination,
See if you recall that.
do you recall that?
What was the question again?
Do you recall in some diary pages where Betty was talking about the fact that she gives Dan lists that he asked for and he doesn't respond to her?
I recall talking about lists. I don't recall the particular passage.
Now, when you read the diaries were in fact 9 volumes, is that correct?
Yes.
And Elizabeth Broderick's writing changed dramatically from over that. When you look at the diaries and go from the beginning of the diaries to the end, there's some dramatic changes in her style of writing, is there not?
From time to time there are, yes.
Okay, and near the end of the diary, it gets to be where it's a lot bigger, her handwriting. In fact, some pages, she might only have 4 words on a page, isn't that right?
There are times it's that way.
And there are times when, are you familiar with how she wrote the diaries?
I believe I know what she said about that.
Okay, and what's your understanding of what she said about that?
That at various times she has said that she began making what she considered journals at the advice of an attorney. She couldn't recall most of the times. She said that an attorney advised her to do it, which attorney it was. I understand that some of the entries were made contemporaneous with the events being described and that others were made retrospectively. That is, some were made the very day things happened or soon thereafter. Some were made at vastly different times. Inserts were made, additions and changes were made, and the intention was not so much to be a running account of the current events, but rather to try to create a document that would contain a great deal of information so it wouldn't be lost.
And a lot of it was about, not necessarily about her day-to-day feelings, but about what was happening in the divorce, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever look to see how many times she would have consecutive days written down? Was it a lot of the time or very little where you would be able to look at 1 month and have January 1st, January 2nd? Or was that very unusual to have that?
There weren't too many times where one had entries many days in a row.
In fact, most of the time there was very little time where you had exactly daily entries. Most of them were interspersed with going back months that were missing. Was
Yes,
there?
that's right.
And the diaries ended in 1988, didn't they?
Yes.
So you weren't able to tell anything after 1988 as to how she felt about certain things, from the diary entries anyways.
Not from diaries, that's right.
Now, you talked about some of the things that she had rages about. Again, sometimes you have to put things into context to understand why someone might be angry about certain things. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is sometimes necessary.
Okay. And you alluded to the Danny tapes and some things that were happening with Ruth Roth and her feelings about that. Did you from her diary, were you aware at the time that she was supposed to have her children over Easter that her brothers and cousins and their families came to visit and were staying at her house and she was planning a vacation with the whole family?
I know there was such a time. I don't know what year you're talking about now.
Okay. And you know that at the last minute at that time that she was told that she was not going to have her children with her family that had come from back east to visit?
I know about an occasion where that's what she says happened to.
Okay. And you knew that that was something that, again, to look and say why a person might be angry or upset, or why they might feel a certain way about something, of course you have to put that in context, do you not?
Depends on what it is you want to know about it.
Well, obviously, when you talk about someone having some kind of rage, there are times when people have rage for no reason at all. There's other times that people are very upset because things happen that are unwarranted, let's say, or they think are unwarranted.
I guess there are many reasons people get angry.
You went through a number of things about Elizabeth Broderick going through the fact that she was looking for Dan and Linda about what their lifestyle was and talked about about envy. And this shows how bad she was in, or at least how strong her disorder was.
Objection, I read this is testimony.
Your Honor, I thought we had an agreement.
Mr. Burke, I'll supposed to do the checking.
If the doctor understands it, I don't have any objection.
Go ahead.
Do you understand it, or is this another one of mine?
Next time I may. Go ahead.
When you were talking about some of the examples for the symptoms of her disorder, you were talking about her fixation, it appeared to be, and maybe I'm using the wrong term, on how Dan and Linda were living, finding out about them. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you take into account at all that at the divorce proceedings at some point in time, she was told that the comparative lifestyles were going to make a difference on how much money she got? In other words, if she could live on $500 a month, that's what she would get. If she could live on $2,000 a month, that's what she get.
I knew that.
Okay. So you knew that that was an issue, is that right?
I knew that she had said that Mr. Hargreaves told her that that was an issue.
Now, you also, the way people react to situations, the situation itself can exasperate that, can exasperate their personality, can it not?
The situation they're in?
Yes.
You bet.
By the way, you said that you talked to Dr. Goldspan and you read his testimony. Is that correct?
Yes, and I also read his notes.
Do you remember reading in his testimony where he said it was totally improper to read DSM-3 as part of the legal proceeding?
I remember what he said about it. It came from the caveat at the front of the book, and it doesn't say that. what he said was that there's a caveat at the beginning, which I think both he and I helped draft, as a matter of fact, indicating that the reliance for legal purposes is one of the areas about which there's controversy. But he didn't say that reading it was improper.
When you do interviews with people, do you, sometimes you do as part of your exam, sometimes you interview people and sometimes you don't, is that correct?
When I do
As far as
evaluations-
forensic testimony, sometimes you interview the people, sometimes you don't.
That's correct.
And I take it from what you said in this case, you felt that since you had some diagnostics, some other people had interviewed Elizabeth Broderick, and there's a lot of material, you felt confident in being able to give your testimony.
I felt it was possible to reach these kind of conclusions on the basis of the evidence available.
Okay, now, when you interview somebody, do you normally go through the events, including what got them into court?
If that's what I'm asked to evaluate, that's not what I was asked to address here.
Well, what criminal cases have you been involved in where you've interviewed the defendant and have not gone through the crime?
Probably 1,000 cases where I interviewed the defendant on an issue of competence to stand trial, and was specifically asked not to evaluate him at the time of the crime.
Well, when you're talking about, those are issues of competence to stand trial, how many times have you not talked to them about the crime when your testimony is not about competence, but about the issues surrounding the crime itself?
We have a sidebar.
No, it's all right. You can answer that.
How many times have I not talked to them about the crime?
When your
when the
testimony is
issue-
simple, yes, maybe if I withdraw the question. Do you normally interview them about the crime when your testimony is such as you have here, when you're talking about these issues that we have here?
Such as here, this is not something I ordinarily do. My most common role for the last 10 years in criminal trials is talking about mental state at the time of a crime. And of course, wherever possible, I will interview defendants about the time of the crime and their mental state. There's some circumstances where that can't be done, but that isn't my role here.
That's rich coming from Mr. Early, considering he had a whole witness on the stand that never spoke to Betty, never spoke to Dan, and was really there to promote his book. I'm not sure why this guy's so purple today. He shouldn't be tense. I think he can. Mr. Early's had some funny moments today, which shows his human side. But this guy's smart. Not saying Mr. Early's not. That sounds bad, but he's not. He is smarter than Mr. Early is, I believe. Especially when you're going to speak to him about this kind of stuff. If you're going to speak to him, Mr. Early, about, law or that, this guy probably can't keep up. But that's not what they're doing. But I'm not sure why he's purple. Matches tie? You must have used the wrong makeup today, or he must have. I don't know, Tink. And we're like going right along through. Here we go.
So that's your understanding of the law, that your job as a forensic psychiatrist is to testify about someone's mental state at the time of the crime?
No, that's my understanding of one of the most frequently asked questions brought to me in the cases I accept.
Well, are you aware in California that you cannot do that?
That's not true. Where there's a defense of insanity, one can do that.
Well, when there's no defense of insanity. Have you testified before where there's no defense of insanity?
Yes.
And are you aware that you cannot testify about the elements around the crime?
Exactly. That's why I haven't, and why this isn't an example of what I usually do.
So in those, for instance, in the Bardo case, you testified in the Bardo case, didn't you?
Yes.
And the Bardo case didn't involve insanity, did it?
No.
And you interviewed him about the crime itself, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you talk to Dr. Goldspan about his interview with Elizabeth Broderick about the crime itself?
I believe Dr. Goldspan found himself in a similar position in some respects.
Well, Dr. Goldsman talked to Elizabeth Broderick, didn't he?
Yes,
And are you aware of any restrictions on what he could talk to her about? Were you aware that he was under any restrictions? Did he tell you he was under any restrictions about what he could talk to her about?
he did not tell me of restrictions. I have an assumption about what the defense was at the time and what he would therefore be free to do, but I don't in fact know.
So you made some assumptions that there was things he was restricted from talking to Elizabeth Broderick about?
I assumed that Dr. Goldsband evaluated her about those things he'd been asked to do. And what he's asked to do is a function of what his client asks him, which is a function of what defense you've entered.
Were you aware of any restrictions, or did he tell you of any restrictions he had about interviewing Elizabeth Broderick about anything? Ask and ask.
I already said no.
When you went through, narcissism, one of the things that you talked about was the rage and about Elizabeth Broderick throwing things. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when somebody throws something in a marriage, when someone gets upset, does that mean they're narcissistic?
No, it could be an ordinary temper tantrum.
Okay.
It could be something more vicious than that.
Now, did you read Elizabeth Broderick's testimony in regards to the fact that, as to what she said about that incident?
I've read at least one account she gave that I can recall, yes.
Okay. And she talked about her son just being born, about still having staples in from an operation, about it being Dan being out with a friend of his, drinking and having the kids with him on a rainy night. And that she was mad about that. Did you read that account?
Yes, that's not the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of the ketchup bottle throwing was just a joke account.
But did you read her account as to the, did you read the account that she had as to about being mad about him coming home late?
Yes.
Okay. And you found that to be a sign of her narcissism?
I didn't refer specifically to that incident. I had in mind the descriptions of her throwing ketchup bottles and stereo.
Oh,
But that might be another example, depending on what she had in mind at the time.
what was the stereo incident about? I thought the stereo was about when she went out to the pizza parlor with Monahan and Dan Broderick and children and came home. What's your understanding that's a different incident?
I thought that was different from the Staples incident.
You would expect then that what you see here as far as narcissism and histrionic, the personality disorder, this is something that is, as you testified, early onset, is that correct? In other words, before in puberty you would expect, or at least in adolescence, you would expect that a person who has a disorder, they have it by then.
A person who has any of the personality disorders, our current understanding is, has developed that disorder by the time they've become adults. And most of us think that for most of the personality disorders, the onset is even before puberty.
Now, there are times that can personality disorders be manifested from what is not a disorder because of stress or other outward stressors?
Well, there are different ways of phrasing this or conceptualizing it, but what certainly is so is that in events that occur may alter the course of an individual's behavior. All behavior is in response to the world.
Well, can you find someone who you would not characterize as having a personality disorder or one of these disorders and have them go through something very stressful in their life and come out after that with the symptoms of a personality disorder?
Who didn't have a disorder in the first place?
Yes.
No.
Is there any kind of diseases, mental diseases that you can get from outside stressors?
There aren't any mental diseases, but there are mental conditions.
Okay, or what kind of mental conditions can you have?
Normal bereavement, getting sad for up to 6 months when someone dies. An adjustment disorder can occur when something goes wrong in life and someone gets upset for a time. Say someone's kicked out of college for using drugs, they can have an adjustment disorder and be depressed and angry and get in even more trouble for a period of time. Or if an individual gets beaten up and terribly bruised, they may have an adjustment disorder. Some traumas with particular features that are life-threatening, or where an entire community is wiped out, or where one sees a loved one who undergoes a mutilating death, can produce what's called a post-traumatic stress disorder. It can only occur with particular kinds of stressors, and there's specific symptoms and signs for that. In addition to those, there are a host of responses listed in DSM-3R that people can have to their environments that include such things as adult antisocial behavior. Sometimes people who seem to have a normal life suddenly embezzle large sums of money or murder someone or do other things unlike their past. That's a response to events that happened to them. So there are lots of different behaviors, some of them for which we have psychiatric names that are responses to the environment. None of them is a disease, however.
When they have you seen the studies on people who are the victims of abuse? When they are tested, they come out with showing disorders.
I'm familiar with many studies of different kinds of victims of abuse, some of which show that a proportion of people who are subjected to particular kinds of abuse, such as physical torture by renegade fascist police squads in South America, will have a proportion of cases of post-traumatic stress disorder. Some show brain damage, some show enormous physical injury, some have enough brain damage to cause them to be demented. If you look at battered women studies, a proportion of battered women will have a post-traumatic stress disorder. If you look at battered kids, for various kinds of abuse, we have data on how often it sometimes causes different disorders.
Well, they also find from battered women that the people will test out as having personality disorders unrelated to prior history. Or you disagree with that?
What are you referring to?
Yeah, have you read any studies that indicate that when people come out of abusive relationships that they can test as having disorders?
I don't know what you're referring to.
So you're not familiar with any studies?
I'm not familiar with any research that's ever shown that someone who did not have disorders before had credible evidence of disorders later, other than the kinds of things I was referring to.
And how about people that come out from hostage taking? Do any of those people ever show signs of disorders?
That's irrelevant.
She wasn't a hostage.
Well, doctor, you indicated that people have to have a disorder in very early life, but there's no way that they would be diagnosed afterwards. Is that true under every circumstance?
That's true for personality disorders, which is what I said. There are other kinds of disorders that can be acquired, such as adjustment reactions, bereavement, criminality. These are things that one can first do in adulthood.
Do they show signs of schizophrenia or psychosis?
That's who.
People who come out of, for instance, concentration camps, or come out of hostage taking, or come out of sometimes abusive relationships.
Objection, I understand.
Will you find that sometimes the person's personality can be, certain facets of it can be highlighted or distorted because of things that happen to them?
Events can cause people to magnify their display of their pre-existing personalities.
Now, there were, you gave an indication of the difference between a clinician and somebody who's seeing someone forensically, that there's a different reason that you see them and things you talk to them about.
That's right. The purposes of clinical and forensic work differ.
Okay. Now, a clinical, persons who are working clinical, they still do diagnosis, and those are still important, is it not?
Yes, though, even that has another purpose.
Okay. But it's not that, are you saying that if somebody was to do a diagnosis on Axis 1 and 2 and 3, that a forensic psychiatrist will come out with a different diagnosis than a clinical psychiatrist?
Well, they may, but theoretically, it should be the same. Since the purposes differ, the rules of evidence differ.
Well, there was a doctor, a psychiatrist that saw Elizabeth Broderick in a hospital setting over a 3-day period of time in 1986. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he diagnosed her as having a bipolar disorder, did he not?
Not originally. Originally, he said she had an adjustment disorder. And then after he saw a computerized test printout, he changed his diagnosis, and one of them was bipolar that he gave. But it was clear that was based on the test results.
Well, wasn't there the first one an admitting diagnosis, and then wasn't there a diagnosis at the time when she left the hospital, a final diagnosis?
Right, but from the context, it's clear the first one was based on what he saw and knew and thought about her. And the second one reflected the influence of this computerized test result.
Okay, so you're saying that the doctor wrote a diagnosis, he came up with that she had what was his diagnosis on Axis 1?
Yeah, this was Dr. Levinson.
Yes.
And originally what he wrote was Axis 1, adjustment disorder of adult life.
That was when she was first admitted to the hospital.
This is the day after she was admitted for bashing in Dan's door.
Okay, but do you know whether she was admitted to that hospital the first day or whether she was transferred there?
I believe she was transferred to that hospital.
And was there a final diagnosis done?
After the test results came back, and despite the letter from Dr. Nydorf saying not to rely on this test, the diagnosis was changed, and the final diagnosis was bipolar affective disorder.
Well, he just said not to rely on that test alone, didn't he?
Well, what he said was, Gary, since there was no history available for Ms. Broderick, it was impossible to answer referral questions on the basis of this one test. It may be unreliable.
And so what you're saying is this doctor did something that you feel is totally unreliable. In other words, he made a diagnosis that's an error.
No, it makes no difference. For clinical purposes, the purpose of diagnosis is to treat the patient so as to help relieve their suffering. Secondarily, there's the purpose of statistics in the hospital, record keeping, reports to insurance companies. But what really matters in the eyes of physicians everywhere is treating the patient. When you're seeing someone clinically, you want to help them. And the treatment plan is what makes the most difference. Does he get the right treatment plan?
Well,
Forensically, it's another matter. The truth is what matters. What's the process? What has occurred? What's the evidence for it? He's not held to those standards when he's doing this, especially when the patient's leaving the hospital and refusing treatment.
so you're saying it's not important if you go to a hospital that someone diagnosed you correctly so that they're treating you for depression? That doesn't matter?
It's precisely why it does matter that you be properly diagnosed to be treated. But the rules of evidence don't matter. Getting the right treatment matters. She
So-
was leaving. She refused treatment.
So it's important for them to do a proper diagnosis to know what kind of treatment to give.
If they're going to treat,
And obviously, when you come to a forensic psychiatrist, the forensic psychiatrist comes in to advocate a position, isn't that correct?
I should hope not. No, the forensic psychiatrist comes in to answer a question. And the goal, and we don't always achieve it, but the goal we strive for, and what I've always tried to train my trainees to strive for, is to be as objective as one can and look at the evidence, see where the evidence leads one.
So the position of
Defense attorney, even I'm understanding this. The doctors in the hospital where she went in for treatment and refused treatment have a different, they're not bound by the rules of evidence. This dude's bound by the rules of evidence. He's looking at it completely different than they would look at it for treatment. He's not going to treat her. And he can't look at everything. They need to look at everything. I don't understand what he doesn't understand. Your third personality. Just gave the lawyer a middle finger. Or the finger. You didn't say middle. I don't know which one. I was just assuming. Ah. He's less purple. But then he started getting purple. But you're almost through it, doctor. For today. The pinky finger.
Well, you indicated that you testified in the Hinckley case.
Yes,
And in the Hinckley case, you worked on that for a year.
right,
And you testified in that.
yes,
And the jury received all your information, your testimony.
they received some of it.
And you feel that there was a lack of truth in that proceeding.
I don't think he said that here, and I don't know how relevant so is.
Sustained.
Well, in that case, your position was that the man didn't have a major mental illness, and that was rejected by the jury, isn't that correct?
It's actually what happened.
Well, sustained. What happened there is not relevant to this case.
Now, Dr. Jacobson saw the Elizabeth Broderick, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Did he make any findings of any depressive disorder?
He didn't diagnose her as having a major depressive disorder.
Well, did he make any diagnosis with depressive disorder?
I don't recall. I'd have to look at that document. I don't have it with me.
Well, when you were looking to see if she had a depressive disorder, would it be important to see what other mental health experts had to say about that?
I did. I just don't recall what everyone had to say.
Was there anyone in the jail did you look at the jail notes?
Oh, excuse me. I do recall what Dr. Jacobson told your investigator. I just remembered the typo. Your investigator wrote that it was a psychothymic disorder. I believe that's a typo for cyclothymic. And then your investigator went on to characterize that as being states of psychosis and bipolar. And of course, that's not true. It's not what it is. But apparently, something was said about her moodiness that got put down in this way.
Okay. So the investigator wrote, it's your feeling that the investigator was not accurately reflecting that disorder?
Well, I don't think the report accurately reflects Dr. Jacobson's findings, but apparently something was said about her moodiness and must have been said about her having times she was down and times she was up.
Well, when you read the trial transcripts from the divorce trial, there was testimony in regards to Dr. Nelson about talking to Dr. Jacobson, him coming with that diagnosis. Is that correct?
Who coming with what?
That Dr. Jacobson coming with the diagnosis.
Of cyclothymic?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
And there was a prescription there was a prescription that she received at that time, Xanax, is that correct?
I think that is right.
And what is Xanax used for?
Treating anxiety.
And is that something that is associated with depressive disorder sometimes? Anxiety?
Well, most of the people who have anxiety disorders don't have depressive illness. The vast majority of people given Xanax for anxiety don't have anything wrong with them. It's the most commonly prescribed class of drugs in America, with many millions of people on it. But it's true that people who are depressed often get anxious too.
And how about Xanax? I mean, and how about Prozac?
Prozac's a fine drug.
Is it what?
Is a fine drug
For what?
treating depression.
Okay.
Is it still?
Now, do you know what she was prescribed in the jail?
Objection goes to the period post murders.
Sustained. She wasn't in jail after the homicides. That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Final objective.
Sustained.
Well, doctor, you testified that you would not classify her as suffering from depression.
At what time?
Your objection is vague.
Yes.
Sustained.
The Dr. DeFrancesca's diagnosis was, her diagnosis is the time that she saw Elizabeth Broderick. Is that correct? Didn't she say that she saw Elizabeth Broderick and her diagnosis would be suffering from major depression?
I don't know. I'd be surprised if it was admitted or post. Perhaps that's what she was testifying to, what was wrong with her after the homicide. So I thought she was testifying about before.
The
It's a good time to take the afternoon recess, Mr. Early. Quick wrap.
Yes, everybody's ready for a break. Yes, at the time it was an 18 when I said that. I was thinking back to things I've watched where teenagers were put on it and it didn't end well for some of them. So that I think I don't know anything about it now, but I was thinking back to things I had watched about that it's maybe not good for young people, but I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. All right, so I told you today would be short. We had about an hour's worth of testimony, which you guys, I know you're going to be thankful for, because Flashman, I was not. The defense. So there's 4 parts to Dr. Dietz's testimony. So this is part 2, which obviously was the defense. Let me see how long next time is, because it's still the defense. So it's about an hour and a half. And then on his last day of testimony, it is just about an hour and 50 minutes. So we see the defense the rest of the time trying to question this witness. The state questioned him for, I think, an hour and 45 minutes total. And I was trying to go through to see when they come back. They don't. They don't even there's no redirect from the state. So that tells you how they think that he does with his questions. Once he's done, then we will go into closing arguments, and we will have this wrapped up next Thursday, like I said, barring that nothing happens. Yes, but it's hard to do it in this case because she basically confessed to it. So he doesn't have any reasonable doubt to create in the fact that she admitted to the crime. But yes, I do agree with you. I picked a new one. What? I don't know. I'll be back. Flashman, I don't know what you were trying to say. Yes, sorry, Puddletown. That's it. It's over. I have 3 in mind. Flashman. Sorry. I was looking at one name and reading another. Didn't work. I think, yes, I'm going to do a shorter one because it still takes us a little bit, but a shorter one, and then move on to either Alaska or Texas after that. I just haven't decided which order I want to do those to those yet. I need to stop reading chat. Oh yeah. Sometimes they have nothing to work with and they do still have to do their best. And it, it kind of sucks, but we gotta have them. Like, I am not anti-defense at all. I've seen some really good defense attorneys, seen some really good prosecutors. I love this judge in this trial. He's my favorite out of all of them. and church lady, who we did not see today, but she's the court reporter, and she's Puddletown's favorite person in this whole entire trial. Not this Thursday, a week from Thursday, the 21st. The 21st. I do not. Why would you say that? Church lady is a saint. Also, the one that was there today, she kept like stretching her wrists. I'm like, you've got, poor thing, got carpal tunnel already. And they don't even really know what that is. So anyway, I will be back Thursday. Tomorrow is dinner, my dinner that I have with my dad and my brother every other Wednesday. So I'll be back Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We will continue on with part 3 of Mr. Early and Dr. Dietz. Hopefully he won't be so purple. And we're getting there, dear. Getting to the end. I know you can't wait. But we're getting closer and closer every day. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you haven't already, please hit that like button on your way out. Also, if you would like to subscribe, I would appreciate it. I do not license. I just like subject matter jurisdiction. No, because I'm not sure what the storms are going to do, and I don't want to have this running and it shut down, and me be just you guys all be sitting there, and I can't get there. So no. Thanks, Adair. That's very sweet. I'm glad you're here. So I will see you guys all Thursday at 6 p.m. and have a great night behind storms. Stay safe. If you don't, enjoy the rest of your night and enjoy your day tomorrow. And I will see you guys all later.